Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about a type of argument that I do not like listening to and do not like. Yeah, I hate it when people make this type of argument because it's so vapid and such a non-argument that it's very meaningless and doesn't mean anything, and I'm not a huge fan of it. This type of argument is basically the type of I'm going to call it a argument from Ethos. The idea that you're arguing that I'm an expert on this, so my opinion is valid, and my arguments are superior to yours because I am an expert. That type of argument is such a weak argument, and it's completely invalid. Like, whenever someone makes this argument, it's very, very fucking difficult to respond because, at least for me, because I don't like making non-arguments. And to actually respond to this type of argument, you need to make either an ad hom attack, or you need to explain why you're more qualified than them, which is just stupid. Like, just make an argument. It doesn't matter how qualified you are. If you're more qualified, that should mean that you should be able to make a better and more clear argument. But it seems like you can't because you're making this ethos argument that is completely vapid. It doesn't actually tell you. It doesn't actually tell me anything. It doesn't actually convince me of anything. It simply makes you sound more confident and more prominent and more like you have a better sort of argument. Honestly, I feel like if someone makes this type of argument, I want to just be like, okay, you win the argument. Good job. You know more than me. My opinion's invalid. Go ahead. You win, and just walk away, because there's no point of engaging in a discussion with that type of person at that point. It's such a dishonest argument because you're not actually making one. You're just simply telling the other person why their opinion's invalid and why your opinion is more valid than theirs. It doesn't mean anything. And I think people get convinced by it. I think people get convinced by that type of argument too, because it's like, oh, this person seems to know what they're talking about. I'll listen to them. But you don't do that. Don't do that. Like, I think that type of argument should be something that makes you less likely to listen to them and less likely to hear them out, because they're not really arguing anything. If it's like, oh, I know better because I did this, or I got this type of education could be valid, although I don't think it usually means much, because you could just make the argument that you were educated on. It should not be that difficult. If you received an education in this topic, then just tell us a little bit about it. Like, tell us what you were educated on. Give us the reasoning. Give us the study. And don't just name a study. Like, actually cite the study, explain it a little bit, because you're educated. You should know how to explain it. You should know how to make a good argument here. I mean, you're so educated. You understand this topic so well. So make a good argument, please. Please. I would love to hear it. But that never happens. It tends to be, oh, I know your opinion is invalid because I know this topic better than you. It's just stupid. It doesn't make any sense. I tend to avoid these type of arguments. Occasionally I'll just tell someone like, oh, I had experience with this, and here's what I've seen from my experience. And I think that can be a decent type of argument. But if you just say, I have experience with this, so my opinion's right, that's the stupidest argument I've ever heard in my life. That doesn't matter. And you also need to explain why your experience is valid and why or if you're going to cite an experience too, you have to explain why that experience is valid and explain why you can make a generalization from said experience, which is also very, very fucking difficult to do. So you want to I try to avoid arguments from experience as much as possible, and arguments from qualifications are basically never valid. I don't think I've ever used one of those. I think arguments from experience, saying that I've had this experience so I understand something, they work as long as that's not the entire argument. Like, I'll argue sometimes like, oh, I'm from a religious background, so I feel like I should understand this a little bit, and then explain why I understand it, because it's like, oh, I've talked with a lot of priests and like had these sort of conversations, and this is what they've explained to me. You need to include that this is what they've explained to me, and explain why that is important, why those sort of interactions are important. You need to do a lot more besides just make an argument from, oh, my experience is valid, or I have the qualifications. Those are stupid arguments. Those are just, yeah, because experience, that's just an anecdote. Qualifications, they mean that your argument should be stronger, but you're not making a very strong argument there. So, I mean, you're obviously unqualified. So, yeah, that was kind of a nice rant there. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.